attendance, and all of us are present and accounted for. Mayor Bailey is on Zoom. So looking for approval of the agenda, unless there's anything anyone would like to add. Oh yes, and we have an addition of other business. Lucas?
I'd like to move the agenda.
Okay. Mayor Bailey seconds. Okay. All those in favor? Okay. Any declaration of pecuniary interests? If there's none, then just if something comes up, let us know. Number 4, adoption of the minutes from a previous meeting, which was held January the 15th. Councillor Oakley, seconded by Mayor Bailey. Any discussion on the minutes before we vote? Okay, all those in favor? Excellent. So that brings us to staff reports. 5.1, the AMO conference delegations. I will turn that over to you, Briar.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. The report is as presented, but staff are looking for direction on what delegation requests to submit with respect to the provincial ministers for the upcoming AMO conference. And also noting that the following delegation requests submitted for the Roma conference were unsuccessful and could be revisited. So that includes the Ministry of Transportation regarding the Bishopsgate Road and the 403 interchange, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing regarding expanding the inclusionary zoning, the Ministry of Long-Term Care regarding funding for the John Noble Home expansion, and the Ministry of Colleges and Universities regarding discontinuation of the local welding program, discontinuation of local Conestoga farming programs, and discontinuation of the local warehousing program. Thank you.
Okay, so can we have a motion to put it onto the floor and then we can chat? Lucas, seconded by Mayor Bailey. Discussion. Lucas.
Through the chair, just in terms of the Ministry of Transportation request, I had a conversation with one of our MPPs a couple weeks back about the Bishopsgate interchange, which they've also been an advocate for to the government. Right now, the government, from his understanding, is not too interested in this particular project, as though it enables industrial development and also acts as a bypass for the Paris area. The government is laser focused on infrastructure that directly enables housing development, and thus they're not as interested in this project right now. So I'm not sure whether or not we get too far with that. In the same conversation, the MPP also had interest in potentially revisiting Green Lane Bridge discussion, so I think that will probably be a larger conversation for a strategic thing with council, but they did have interest in that because that would enable the north to south KW through Brantford route, which would enable housing, and that they would have more of an interest in.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I'd like to reiterate that specific to MTO, I believe we should be revisiting the Rest Acres Road corridor. There's potentially at full build out approximately 5,000 jobs to be had with that development, and we're actually not looking for funding from MTO for that. We're looking for approvals to actually phase that so we can get things going, and arguably that would have an impact on housing given the Kingwood development is also in that area. So I would suggest that be an item that we include for MTO specifically.
Okay, any other thoughts?
I would concur with that, and just on the general topic of delegations, I think it would be a good opportunity to look into some joint delegations with City of Brantford for this conference, particularly relating to the gender-based violence, which both of our councils have made pledges to address. The province just on Wednesday acknowledge the IPV as an epidemic. I think the iron's hot with this topic, and I think doing some joint advocacy with the city of Brantford would be a positive. In addition, the Social Services Committee on Wednesday morning was also unanimous in its advocacy for sustainable funding. So I think that would be worth adding to the Municipal Affairs and Housing delegation, addressing sustainable funding for our locally built social housing projects. And that would be a good project as well, I think, to do some joint advocacy on with the city of Brantford. And then one further thing as an independent thing that we could do a delegation on, I'm curious whether or not it would be worth a delegation with OMAFRA in partnership with either BFA or OFA, as we had a brunch with them lately that I was invited to, Mayor Bailey was invited to, suggesting that agricultural impact studies should be integrated into the normal development process when we're talking about developing farmland. And given that the current proceedings at Wilmot are in the news, it might be a timely time to bring it up as a potential delegation and in allyship with our agriculture industry.
Just a question for you, Councillor Oakley. For the gender-based violence one, do you have any thoughts on which ministry we would put the delegation into?
That is a good question. I think that would probably I don't know all the names of the ministries offhand, but I believe there's a community family services ministry. I believe they also they were just at Lansdowne. I can picture the minister's face, but I don't have the name on top of my tip of my tongue right now.
We will go to Briar.
Thank you. Just through you, Madam Chair, I just did a quick Google here. Minister of Families, Children, and Social Development, Minister Janice Sutz. Does that sound right?
Yes, I think so.
I believe she's must have been one of the new ones when they just shuffled everything.
Yes, it was.
Ago.
It was someone else recently.
Yeah.
But yeah, that I think would probably be the appropriate ministry, and City of Brantford might have some input if we do want to do a joint delegation with them as to who they want to talk to.
And so maybe that's something at our upcoming joint services meeting. We could maybe, because I believe Allison has added that potentially to the agenda as part of her report. So maybe we could have that conversation with them then. Any other thoughts for delegations? Mayor Bailey, do you have any thoughts?
No, I think that Lucas's idea is a great idea. I'm just be aware that they've limited the number of the people in the room that can speak to the minister. So if we did do something with joint services, I would suggest that. Well, look, you're not coming anyway, Lucas, right?
I am going to AMO. I believe this is for the AMO delegations. I will be going, but I mean, if
you
I
are
can't be
going.
in the room, then so be it.
Yeah. Okay. So if we do something with Brantford, let's just be aware that they should be. If we invite them in, we should at least give them equal space. So if 4 people can come into the room, it should be 2 and 2, and we don't ever want them not to be able to win an argument or a vote.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, and I know sometimes to on that same note, with the thoughts around OMAFRA, we should probably double check. I know last year when we got there, they told us that we were only allowed to have elected officials in the room. So if we should check that ahead of time, because we can still do like what we did with Raw Carrot, and we could collect the information we need from the Brant Federation. Have them help us put together the speaking notes if they're not able to actually be in the room. Allison?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. And in the same vein as Councillor Oakley's suggestion, I would also put forward the Ministry of Health for hospital funding, either independently or jointly with the city.
I think that's probably a pretty good one. Councilor Oakley?
Yeah, I think that's definitely something worth running by City of Brantford, because I think I don't think we necessarily want to go independently, because we should be on the same page as City of Brantford, and depending on where City of Brantford is sitting with it right now, I don't. If they don't feel comfortable going at it at this time, then I think that's best to leave for another time while we formalize a strategy there. But I think if we can make the timeline work and get a delegation in with City of Brantford, I think that would be appropriate.
Mayor Bailey?
Yeah, Madam Chair, and I think if we do go to to speak about the hospital, we should go with no sort of point of view as far as the strategy, because right now it's sort of come back to a starting point. So whether it be a retrofit or whether it be a new build, I just think that we should come in with support of a new facility. I don't know that we should show our cards as to what we prefer right now, since it's up in the air and right actually further than when we started. So it's even sort of in the hole a little bit as far as what people think now. So I think if we just show support of a new hospital with no with no clear stand as to what that would mean.
Yeah, I'd agree. And maybe to that point too, perhaps it's more of an awareness piece, keeping it top of mind. Since we would have met with anyone from the Ministry of Health last time, our council's been for a tour and we've seen it firsthand how disastrous it is. So maybe it's more of like that type of like, we need to move up the list type deal, rather than specifics around what the actual build looks like at this point in time. Any thoughts on any of the other ones that were on this list? I think Ministry of Colleges and Universities, we did actually end up getting, maybe we didn't specifically, but I know SCORE met with them at the Roma conference, and that was part of the discussion around those programs specifically, so we could decide whether we want to go ahead with that one again or focus our energies on some of the other ones. And same with John Noble Home. I'm not sure what the status of that one is, whether there's merit to trying to talk to someone about that one. Briar?
Through you, Madam Chair, I do have an update following my verbal update on 7.2, just regards to the John Noble Home delegation.
Okay, so maybe we'll leave that one for now. Okay, any other thoughts for AMO conference? The other thought, and maybe this kind of blends with the other business discussion for more of the broader strategy, but since the conference is in Ottawa, is there merit on reaching out to any of our MPs who may be in Ottawa at that time, or any of the federal ministries? Lucas?
I certainly think that's worth at least inquiring about. I'm sure many of them will be back at their home municipalities, but I think it is worth, like, in sort of the same vein as we potentially want to have a joint delegation with City of Brantford in regards to the housing funding. Getting in the room with the federal minister would also be a good opportunity. So I think it's at least worth sending out some emails to either the local MPs, Brian May, for example, who's in government, to see if we can't get in the room with Sean Fraser while we're up there anyways. And then I'm sure our MP, Larry Brock, would also like to hear from us if we're up there and he's up there at the same time to meet. And I think it's worth pursuing at the very least, even from an informal standpoint.
Never hurts to ask, I suppose, right? Okay, so any other discussion on AMO? Not seeing any. Briar, what do we need to do with this one?
So through you, Madam Chair, the recommendation in the staff report just asks for staff for direction on which specific ones to submit for. So if we could just go through the list and let me know, that'd be good.
Sure. So what have we've added a bunch there on you. I think.
Yes. So just what I have here, because there has been just some conversations with regards to Brantford and just like holding off on that. So what I have right now is the Minister of Transportation regarding Rest Acres Road Corridor, the Minister of Health regarding the new hospital funding. That's what I have so far.
And then OMAFRA, I think, was the other one that we could do on our own.
That was the Minister of
Agriculture. Yeah. Mary Bailey?
Madam Chair, I'm still in negotiations too with other mayors in the area. So I will be I'll be joining into other delegations, either with Oxford or Haldeman or Norfolk, probably Cambridge for something. So I'm going to tag on to some of those if it's relevant. So we haven't decided which ones we want yet. I think we've been okay for 3, but I haven't firmed up with them yet. So I wanted to see what we had going on our own first, and if we don't have the ones that they're concerned with, then I'll tag on to neighboring municipalities.
That sounds good. Okay, so yeah, so we have the 3 of ours for sure, and then we had the Community Family Services, social whatever that one is, Minister Suds, as a potential with Brantford, as well as MPAC with Brantford potentially, right? Or not? No, municipal housing. Yes, it's MMAH. Yeah, so we can discuss with Brantford to see whether there's some appetite to do anything jointly with them before we settle on those. And then the federal ministries, is that something that we would have you guys send those emails out, or?
I'm not sure.
Through you, Madam Chair, we can certainly get a letter drafted for review by this committee, and then it can be sent out through the clerk's department or by myself.
Okay, sounds good. Mayor Bailey.
Through you, Madam Chair, I just want us to be careful again with the joint services in Brantford, because I know that they're going to be speaking about Lansdowne, and that'll be the same minister that we'll be wanting to speak to about the intimate partner relationships. And so I just want to make sure that if we each have too much to talk about, that we separate those into 2 delegations. I don't want to be in the room hoping or waiting for an opportunity to speak to what we're concerned with when I know that there's 2 delegations slated already from the city to talk about Lansdowne. So just, if we can be just aware of what we will be talking about in joint meetings before we sign up for it.
No, that's a good point, and I think that can be part of the discussions when we try and see if there's interest in those. We could say these are the specific topics we want to talk about.
Yeah, and we're concerned about Lansdowne too. So I mean, we could be in on that meeting with Brantford to talk about Lansdowne, but then I think we should have another meeting, and then that it could also be joint talking about something else. I just don't want to be the last thought at the end of the delegation when 80% of the speaking is regarding Lansdowne.
Good point. Allison?
Through you, Madam Chair, I just in terms of process, I would suggest that we send a request to City of Brantford for the Joint Services Committee that this be added as an agenda item for discussion. Just joint advocacy in general.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. Do we need to make a motion on that? Or is it okay? Lucas, did you have something?
Oh, just through the chair, a thought on that is, I'd be curious if we don't want to reach out right now, because I mean, we've already added and changed the terms of service of the joint committee specifically. I'm curious if we don't just, as a letter from this committee, specifically address the city of Brantford and just communicate through this lens right now before bringing the joint services, and then at a later date consider joint advocacy. Just because I imagine the timelines for getting in an AMO delegation are relatively tight, that it might be appropriate just sometime after this meeting or after we ratify the results of this meeting, just to send a communication out to them rather than discuss it through that meeting, which I'm sure will already be full of discussion.
That's a good point. Mayor Bailey?
Yeah, I agree with Lucas. I think we should let the agenda for the next joint service meeting stand untouched. And then right after that, whatever happens at the next meeting, then this come through for the next meeting.
Okay. All right. So if there is nothing else for the AMO conference, we can move along to pull my agenda back up here. We're on to other business. So 6.1. Oh, sorry.
We just have to vote on the motion.
Good call. And that's just to essentially receive this information and provide direction. Okay. So we already had it moved and seconded. So all those in favor? There we go. Okay. So now on to item 6, 6.1, which is I added this one and thought it might be good. So far, our first couple of meetings with this committee, we simply stuck to our delegations for whatever the upcoming conference would be. So I wondered if maybe it would be a good time, now that we've had a couple meetings under our belt, to have a little bit of a discussion about a more broad strategy for government relations, because the delegations at the conferences are only a very small piece, and it's essentially your quick cattle call. You get your 15 minutes, maybe 10, 15 minutes, and that's it. So there's definitely more we could be doing outside of those events. So just wanted to bring that to the table for some discussion about how we might like to maybe expand some of our government relations. And that could include things like, meetings and starting to build those relationships with other municipalities that are neighboring, beyond even the city. It could be other delegations to other ministers separate from the conference, anything like that. So I'm open to having some discussion around that and getting some thoughts from the two of you and from Allison on what maybe a broader strategy could look like and how that might impact us for the better. Mayor Bailey?
Yeah, Madam Chair, the only thing that I'm concerned about with this committee, I think this committee is a really good idea and I'm glad we have it. I just hope we don't lure our MPPs down a road of commenting on municipal politics. One of the big no-nos for an MPP, I would believe, is to comment or muscle in on municipal politics. They are different arms of government, and I hope last meeting I thought that we were telling our minister or Will about things, and he had comments back to us on those things that we didn't really ask for, but we got. And I just don't want to get any MPP in a position where they comment or try to change our plans just because they know of them. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, but I just know that meddling in municipal politics is not something that's on the top 10 of an MPP's list. So I don't know if I said that right or not, but I don't want to be I don't want to be the cause of the problem that we can use against the ministers later on if we find that their comments changed our plans.
Yes, that's a fair comment, and something we can certainly be cognizant of when we're having those discussions. Any other thoughts, Allison? Oh,
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Just a suggestion that perhaps there's significant government relations and advocacy work that goes on through SCORE and the Warden's Caucus. As you know, we're part of both of those. So just to find some maybe efficiencies in how we can collectively strengthen one another, since we are part of those groups, is to have the latest minutes from each of those meetings, SCORE and WOWC respectively, added to the agenda for our government relations for review, just even as communications, so that we can review them in the light of what this committee wants to do and how we could perhaps piggyback on some of the work that they're doing.
that's a really good idea. Lucas?
I just to comment on Mayor Bailey's statement. I do largely agree that we don't want to too much encourage over involvement of our MPPs in specifically what's going on locally. But I do think it's worth having the conversations and the communication. I think it's valuable to have it as a two-way street. So I do see what you're saying, and I agree that we don't want to over encourage influence. I do think it's still worth having those conversations and getting some feedback on where a ministry might be feeling about how we might approach things, because I think information ultimately is power, and being able to inform ourselves and take a slightly different angle to accomplish the same things. If we hear the route that we're going to take maybe isn't going to sit well with the ministry, and if there's a slightly different route we can take to accomplish the same thing, I think that's information worth having. And I think as well, part of this and part of the mandate of this committee is making sure that we're speaking to more than just the one MPP we traditionally speak to, so we get a wider breadth of conversation and insight into what the government may or may not be thinking, so that we can act most effectively.
Mayor Bailey?
Yeah, and I think too, I think Lucas is right. I think we have to be careful whether we tell the MPP what we're thinking of doing or what we are going to do. I think once we say we are going to do it, and then they have opinions as to other ways we could do it. Once we say this is how we're going to do it, that's the problem. So I think we should throw everything out as ideas that aren't confirmed or that aren't committed to, and then get their opinion. I think that's what Lucas wants, is their opinion. I also, because I do sit on the boards of both SCORE and the wardens, it is an open public meeting. And if either of Lucas or Jen, you ever want to go with me, it is an open meeting with a gallery, so you're certainly able to hear it. Last month we did have the ministers in the room. We had Ernie, and we had Brady, and we had what was the other man? I forget his name. And we had 3 or 4 MPPs there. So if you ever want to come to those meetings, you don't sit at the table, but you can certainly sit in the room and you hear everything. So if there's ever any interest by either of you, or Allison or anybody, Briar, if you want to come, you can come too, and just hear what's going on all through the whole sort of area. It's very interesting, and it is a different perspective on all of our issues that we're dealing with.
Lucas?
Through the chair, on that same sort of note, I think that would be a fantastic idea. One thing that I think we would need is, like myself and Jen don't have access to the schedule for those meetings. So actually, the last SCORE meeting I did show up to at the council chambers, and I found it out from your post on Facebook, Mayor Bailey. So I just figured I got nothing better to do, and this is a good thing to go take a look. So I came down, but otherwise I don't have the ability to plan it because I'm not in the loop with those that scheduling conversation.
Yeah, we could have Spencer let you both know when those meetings are.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That'd be great. I think the other piece too is perhaps kind of strengthening some relationships with some of our municipal neighbors beyond Brantford. So one that comes to mind maybe is North Dumfries, that there's potentially some road works and stuff that are kind of right on the border, or things like their no truck route in downtown Ayr that kind of come out of the blue because we're not as well connected in with them. So I'd be open to some thoughts around whether or not it'd be worth setting up some kind of informal, like, get to know you, what's going on with your council, what's going on with our council type things, with some of those other neighbors who are equally as close as Brantford, but we don't typically connect with them as much. Really?
Yeah, and Sue Foxton she's a big convention kind of lady. She loves all of the attending all of the conventions and conferences. She likes separate meetings inside the conference too. So if you want to meet with Sue to talk about any of those things, we should set it up in the days that we are at the convention, just in a room. They have little breakout rooms and stuff. And Sue and maybe from someone from Cambridge could meet with us, and we could just have like a not a lunch, but something before or after a lunch, and just sit down and talk to them at the convention. And that way, it's a more targeted place, and we're in a political mindset. And I think that's a great idea. If you think there's time while we're at the conference to do something like that.
That's definitely a good suggestion. I guess we'll just have to wait and see which delegations we get from our list that we gave prior. See what time is left in between.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that would be a great idea. Because yeah, just the more I think about it, there's some of these things that come up. I mean, they would probably never. I don't know if they'd have time for us or not, but I mean, we probably could have helped give Hamilton a bit of a heads up on that stormwater thing, how that might have went down. But we've certainly learned from them, so that was good. But yeah, like I think there's definitely some municipal partners, and we had that really great evening with Six Nations a couple of weeks ago. So maybe it's time to set up some meetings with them and see if there's some synergies on some different things. Because who knows, but potentially that would be a group we could do some joint advocacy on different things with. So yeah, Lucas.
On some of the more like the broader committee mandate and strategy conversation, I'd be curious if at some point it's not worth talking about strategically approaching the various conventions we go to. For example, like pretty much by and large, our council goes to Roma, we go to Good Roads, and we go to AMO, and we don't particularly coordinate who goes and how people get there. And there's numerous other conventions that we don't go to. Most notably, a lot of what we discussed today has been with the provincial government, but we don't have any presence at, to my knowledge, I don't think we've ever gone to FCM. And certainly that is a lot more of a commitment in terms of getting there, because it's, I believe this year's in Calgary. We are a smaller municipality, but at the same time, I think we're missing the boat in advocacy to our federal government by missing some of those conventions. We also don't have a coordination strategy for OSUM. I'm curious if at some point it's not worth having the conversation through this committee of strategically making sure we get people at all of these various conventions. I know we approved sometime last year to have an increased conference budget. And certainly we can't, just the three of us, be the only ones going to every single convention, because we have lives to live, presumably. But I think we are missing the boat with not hitting all of these, not hitting some of these conventions in terms of our advocacy, particularly to the federal level.
That's a good point. Allison?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to compile a list of all sort of possible conferences coming up, where they are cost, including the ones we go to, but also, as you mentioned, FCM, or maybe some others that we don't. And maybe that can be a sort of coordinated meeting discussion to talk about those on an annual basis, and dividing and conquering at some of these conferences. We've been having a similar discussion, or just did have a similar discussion at the senior management team level, and talking about the number of staff too. I am happy to offer people the opportunity, but we can't have everybody at everything. It's not efficient or responsible fiscally. So we're trying to make sure that we have somebody at everything, but we're doing it reasonably, and it's a reasonable number of people. So I'm happy to compile that list and bring it back to the next meeting.
That would be great. Councilor Rugby.
On sort of the same vein, something we mentioned SCORE earlier in Western Borden's caucus. We also don't have a particular strategy when it comes to promoting our delegations and the what we get out of conventions. I had a constituent ask me after coming back from Roma, what are your takeaways to make sure that your we're getting our tax dollars worth out of going to these conventions. And I think it might be worth looking at sort of a central communication strategy. Certainly, I might make a tweet or a Facebook post that I've gone to see a minister, but perhaps something coming even from our central communications of the county of Brant has gone and spoke to all these ministers to advocate on your behalf for all these things. Might be worth having just a more central strategy there, particularly when we met with Minister Rickford. He has a photographer there at all times, so they had fantastic photos. And as much as the photos are a bit of a fluff piece side of things, for communicating what we're doing, I think it is worth looking into making sure that we have someone there with a camera taking good photos while we're meeting with ministers, and not just the posing afterwards, but the actual conversation. I think people appreciate that and get more out of seeing the work happening that way.
Maybe the action shots. I think that's good. Allison, do you have any thoughts on that? Like, is that something that's doable, or?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's certainly something we could do. I think we would ask for rough content from anybody who attends them and pictures, and then we can have our team put that together in a cohesive format. I would also maybe suggest that that's something we're going to be doing for the first time, but it is going to be an annual exercise to do a corporate annual report. That, of course, will be a good tool for everyone around the council table. And we could have a section in that includes conferences for the year, so sort of a wrap up. But we could sort of have many pieces that could be used as a tool immediately following conferences as well.
Lucas?
Through the chair, I think it's also worth in that when we're doing delegations and doing that year wrap-up report, if any of our delegations have, after any of our delegations, if any policies come out that's related to it, even if maybe we're being a bit generous by saying that we're the ones who did it, I think it's worth taking the opportunity to take credit for it there. Just as it's, if we went and delegated and the government followed through, I think it's worth highlighting that.
Well, it never hurts to applaud whatever the effort might be, right? Okay, so anything else on sort of that broader strategy piece? Seeing nothing. Okay, so that moves us on to number 7, communications, 7.1, which was the letter from Minister Rickford, essentially just thanking us for our delegation. Is there any comments on that at all? Seeing none, do we need to do anything with that? Just okay, so a motion to receive. Lucas? Seconded by Mayor Bailey. All those in favor? Okay. And then 7.2, a verbal update on Good Roads from Briar.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. So there are 2 delegations currently confirmed for the 2024 Good Roads Conference, including the Ministry of Infrastructure regarding expanded ask for infrastructure funding, and the Ministry of Transportation regarding ministerial delays in responses resulting in delayed developments. The Minister of Long-Term Care is not attending Good Roads, so the delegation request regarding the funding for John Noble Home expansion has also been declined. So staff are looking to determine a lead speaker and like a briefer, someone providing the material for the 2 confirmed delegation, the background material. And that background briefing material is to be completed no later than Thursday, April 18th. So just looking on direction on who to determine a lead speaker and a briefer for both confirmed delegations. Thank you.
Thanks, Briar. Councillor Oakley?
Through the chair, in terms of the infrastructure delegation request, since we've made the request, the government's come out with a significant infrastructure fund. So I think that perhaps the strategy there is to pivot to speaking in favor of our application, which I believe we've put in. So I think that would be worth sort of pivoting the topic there so that we're laser focused on getting that approved. And perhaps that's also worth, I know what at least one of our MPPs was also very interested in moving that forward, letting them know that we're going to be advocating at Good Roads on behalf of this application.
Okay. Any other thoughts on the two? Allison?
Through you, Madam Chair, just a bit of an update on those, just to follow up on what Briar has mentioned. I know that staff have put together drafts of some speaking notes for those, so I will take a look and see where they are. I believe we're pretty close on that, but certainly I'd want to check that funding stream application was included. But I will have those circulated to members of this committee.
Thank you. The other thing, so I know I'm not attending Good Roads, and Councillor Oakley, you are not as well. So Mayor Bailey, that leaves you as our champion for our delegations. So yourself, Councillor McAlpine, Councillor Pierce, and Councillor Chambers are who Alicia has told me will be attending. So any thoughts on who we should ask to lead each of these? Or Mayor Bailey, is that something you would like to do? Or
yeah, I would like to be in the room for both of them, and I can speak at both of them. The notes are very clear; anyone can read them. It's just a matter of who would have more. What would be talking about? Whether we're going to be talking about Robert's area, if we're going to be talking about infrastructure, right in Paris. I mean, Pierce is very good at delegations. So I think we could work that out. I want to be in both, but I don't have to speak in either. But I don't mind speaking in both. I think the right person should be doing the speaking, and if it's me in one, great. And if it's not me, that's fine too. But I think we'll work that out once we see the notes. Allison's going to get us a copy of the notes, and once we read them, we'll know who's most suited to read them and who should be in the room to answer questions. Sometimes John McAlpine likes to be in the back of the room just to know things. He doesn't really sometimes like to speak, but he does like to be there. But that'll be up to him to make that decision. So we'll treat everyone as equal going into it, and then we'll read the notes maybe together, the five of us, and we can decide amongst us.
sounds good. Allison?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I concur with what Mayor Bailey has mentioned. Rob Walton will be the primary staff person in terms of preparing these notes, given the subject matter. I know that he's done quite a bit of work in this already. I would note that the two items that we're discussing, that funding stream is specific to St. George, the water treatment,
Yep.
And then the Rest Acres Road corridor. So both having Mayor Bailey and Councillor Pierce as representatives of Paris and St. George, and the mayor and deputy mayor appointed when Mayor Bailey's not available would be entirely appropriate.
That sounds good to me.
That sounds right to me.
Okay. Any other thoughts on Good Roads before we move on? Not seeing any. You don't need any direction for that. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so then that brings us, unless there is anything else anyone would like to discuss. Seeing none. Okay, so then that does bring us to number 8, which is next meeting and adjournment. So, motion to adjourn. Councillor Oakley. Thank you, everyone.